The following program is made possible in part by the Dayton Bar Association.
Monta, your producer and host for today's program and the kickoff for the 2016-2017 season here at DATV. And fitting with the season, tonight's topic is going to be the election 2016, and we are going to talk about the presidential election as well as Ohio and local races. Joining me as guests on tonight's show, Chair of the Democratic Party, Mr. Mark Owens, and Mr. Niraij Antani, spokesman for the Republican Party and a House rep for the 42nd District. Before we get to our discussion, let me remind you that You and the Law is a monthly presentation produced here at the studios of the Dayton Access Television. DATV is on Channel 5. It's the public access channel of Time Warner Cable Network in Dayton. The program is also cablecast by tape delay via the auspices of the Miami Valley Cable Council. And I believe we also get this program live in the suburbs on Channel 6 on Time Warner. And if I'm wrong and you're watching some other channel that has this program, let us know, but I think it's Channel 6. The executive producer is the originator of this show back in the 80s, former Judge Mike Brigner. We also cablecast on, we also stream live on DATV.org. So if you were watching that on your computer or whatever, your phone, whatever device, we invite your calls also, because this is an audience participation program, and we will periodically have a phone number, which is 223-5311, and there it is. If you have a question, a comment, please call in and we will address that. So, we are also sponsored, and I forgot all about this, and DBA, Dayton Bar Association, sponsors us, and we'll talk a little bit about them as the show goes on. So let me turn to our guests, have them further introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about the candidates and their background and familiarity with the topic. We'll turn first to Mark Owens, Democratic Chair. Good evening, Mark.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having us on tonight. You wanted me to talk a little bit about my background first.
We'll get to the candidates in a minute.
And so I'm the chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Party. I've been so since 2007. I've also am the clerk of courts for the Dayton Municipal Court, and I've been that since 1991. I am a proud graduate of the University of Dayton School of Law, and from Wright State University, I got my political science degree.
Very good, thank you. And now we turn to Mr. Niraij Antani, first time on the show, but a spokesman tonight for the Republican Party. Good evening.
Thanks for having me, and excited to be on. Like you said, my name is Niraij Antani. I'm the state representative for the 42nd House District, which includes most of the southern suburbs of Dayton. I've been in the State House now for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in December, and I'm honored to serve the Dayton area in the House of Representatives in the State House in Columbus. I was born and raised in Miamisburg, where I still live. Lived there my entire life. I'm a proud graduate of Miamisburg City Schools. Did my undergrad at Ohio State, got my Bachelor of Arts in Political Science there, moved back home, and just have been involved in politics since I interned for Congressman Turner when I was in high school. Excited to be here to talk about the Republican Party. And I also, in addition to being the state rep for this election cycle, I'm also the chair of Senator Portman's re-election campaign in Montgomery County.
Thank you, Niraj. And there I am again. So this election, as you've probably seen on TV or heard in newsprint, is one of the most important elections that we will see in our lifetime. And two candidates who are considered volatile, especially by the other sides of their campaigns. So what we would like to do tonight is have tonight's surrogates, and I hope you don't mind me calling you surrogates for the night, to tell us about the platforms of the candidates and what they hope to accomplish as the next president of the United States. And we discussed who would go first on this, and I don't think it's that big a deal on our show, but we've chosen Mark Owens. So Mark, you have the floor.
All right, thanks, Mike. I guess we're going to go by seniority here. I guess I've been through a few more of these elections.
You were a millennial in what year?
I was
1977,
right.
probably. Okay.
So we, again, it seems like every year they talk about it as the most important election, but this one is obviously has a lot of impact for a number of reasons. We've had a split Congress and split very divisive atmosphere in Washington over the last several years, and I think it's an opportunity to bring some folks together, and we hope that people, when they vote, will consider that when they vote. But what I think Hillary Clinton wants to accomplish, and we'll talk a little bit about domestic policy. First of all, I think she wants to bring in some policies that will strengthen and continue the economic growth that we've had for the past 7.5 years since Barack Obama was president. You know, he came in with the worst economic conditions we've had since 1928, really 1929, with the Great Depression. She wants to make sure that there's growth for all sectors in the economy, not just the upper echelons and not just in Wall Street. She has a detailed economic plan on how to help and bring back some industry and make incentives to have industry. She wants to disincentivize people leaving the country, having these tax breaks off of off coast where they manufacture and hide their companies off coast. On education, excuse me, she has a detailed plan on number one is to make all places such as junior colleges to make it free for everybody. She wants to make public education for post high school, post-secondary school affordable and basically free for anybody, for a family less than $250,000, because we really do have to invest, and that's one of the things that make our economy grow, is to invest in education and to get people to stay in the States and stay here to help us. I mean, one of the things that is, there's an old saying that all politics is local, and we do have some fine education facilities here right in Ohio. We need to find places where people will stay here once they get their education. Ohio, unfortunately, is one of the least educated states that we have for college education in the country. We used to be one of the leaders in that. Now it's fallen. So that, I think, helps our economy grow. I don't know if I'm taking up too much time.
No, you're fine. Let me just butt in and ask you one question. And a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, you hear this in the media that some people want a change. They say we've got to shake up Washington, and Hillary Clinton is the embodiment of 8 years of desultory government. Why is that? Why is that not true from the Democratic point of view? And what can Hillary Clinton offer, which is either an extension of President Obama's agenda or changes for the better?
Well, I think it's building on his agenda is what I would say. And part of the problem is, and you know, when President Obama came in, one of the things that with Mitch McConnell and others, that you know, their whole idea was to try to stop his agenda as it started, and a lot of reasons for that. We can go into that, but part of it is the base of their party just did not want to cooperate, and I think if they did cooperate with the president, they were going to have problems maintaining their leadership. That's kind of what happened to John Boehner. At some point, he said, "Okay, we've got to cut deals and stuff." And then once he did that, then some of the base abandoned him, and he didn't really have an issue. So that's one of the basic problems, and to some extent, we have that in our party too. Is that we have some hardliners that don't want to make compromises. So that's one of the biggest problems in Washington. But Hillary Clinton has had a long history when she was in the Senate of reaching across the aisle and working with others to come up with things that help both parties. When she was the First Lady, she first brought forward the what they called at that time Hillary Care, and it didn't pass mustard. But she went right to work and came up with making sure that children were covered, and she did work across the aisle with Republicans and get that done. So she's had a proven history of working across the aisle, both as a First Lady when she was there, and as a United States Senator when she was in the Senate, to work across the aisle and get things done. So that's one place that that I think that she can build on what Barack Obama did. You know, the other, you know, another thing, and well, I'm sure that we'll be talking about it, is that, you know, what goes on with the Supreme Court. I mean, we've had historically have never gone this far without having a person even get a hearing, let alone a vote. And so whoever wins this election is going to tip the balance, at least for Justice Scalia's
At least make
seat.
the nomination.
At least not make the nomination. And it's likely we have, I think, 3 of the other justices are going to turn 80 during this next 4-year term. So there could be a huge shift in what goes on in the Supreme Court as well.
Okay. All right. Niraij Antani, you've been silent here for the last 5 minutes.
Well,
the platform of the presidential campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, I think the first thing we have to talk about is when we started this race, there were 17 Republican candidates, all of which had varying experiences and views on different issues. Now, you know, I was a delegate for Governor Kasich. I endorsed Governor Kasich. I went to the convention for him in Cleveland. But I think after the convention, you saw the Republican Party coalesce around Donald Trump. Obviously, not someone who is shy, and someone certainly who makes his views known. But at the end of the day, is the standard bearer now for the Republican Party. So I think that you're going to see, if Donald Trump gets elected, him along with you know, Senate Republicans led by Mitch McConnell and Rob Portman, and House Republicans led by, you know, Speaker Ryan and Congressman Turner. You're going to see them advocating for the same issues we've advocated for since the inception of our party, and that is lower taxes and less government, getting regulations off of the backs of employers so that we can grow the economy. I think you're going to see, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court, someone who is very pro-life and pro-gun nominated. I know that even for a lot of Republicans who didn't originally support Donald Trump, the issue of the Supreme Court is making them fall in line with the Trump-Pence ticket. They certainly understand the ramifications on knowing that if Hillary Clinton gets elected, Roe v. Wade will not be overturned for the next 40 years, if indeed these next 3 to 4 seats of these justices turning 80 will turn over during the next 8-year presidency. And I also think that, you know, one of the issues we have to talk about is foreign policy. I think that people agree that the Obama-Clinton foreign policy was a failure. we saw what happened in Benghazi. We've seen, the terrible Iran deal come down the pipeline. And I think that people are afraid. They're afraid of America's role in the world. They're afraid of America's security in the world. They're afraid of ISIS. And so we need someone who is a strong leader. And traditionally, when it comes to military and national security, Republicans are the party under which we are seen as safer and stronger. And so I think that, with Trump and congressional Republicans, that will certainly be a factor. So I think, issue to issue, it's really a choice, I think, of whether we want to extend the Obama presidency for another 4 years. I think Chairman Owens alluded to that. I think the majority of Americans, that's a no, and that they want something new. They don't want someone who is a DC insider, and for them, that will be Donald Trump.
Okay, let me ask a question here. That a person who is considered an insider, is that a person who knows what's going on and how to run the government, and is an outsider somebody who is going to change everything, and if so, for the better?
Well, I mean,
And let me add this. There's been talk about, from Mr. Trump anyway, about 30 years of failed policies. I do remember in 2000, at the end of the first President Clinton's presidency, we had a surplus on the budget and from spending for the first time in from the First World War. So now don't quote me on that. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Let me just finish. And that went spiraling down to the biggest deficit, and probably because of reducing taxes. Now everybody likes reduced taxes. I do too. But it took money out of the budget, I believe. And put us in the worst financial crisis since the Depression. I wasn't around for that, but and then we had 14% unemployment. Now we have 4 or 4.5, and this past year has been the biggest economic improvement according to the latest studies. So, with that in mind, and assuming that everything I said was true or close to being true, is there anything wrong with somebody reducing the unemployment rate 10 points and increasing wages and lowering poverty, or are those failed policies? So,
I think
what do
you have to, let's talk about fact and narrative, right? So, first I would say that, it is true that during President Clinton's presidency, the budget was balanced, but there are also
and
those—
a surplus.
But there are also those who say that it was Newt Gingrich, who was then Speaker of the House, and John Kasich, who was then Chairman of the Budget Committee, who forced his hand into a balanced budget. That President Clinton didn't want a balanced budget. He wanted to spend above and beyond the surplus that they had, but it was Republican Newt Gingrich and Republican John Kasich who forced him to balance the budget. The second thing I would say is that the economy, yes, has improved, but where has it improved? If you look at different studies, it's improved in states that have Republican governors and Republican legislatures, like Michigan, like Ohio, like Florida, and has not improved in states that are democratically led. So I think that President Obama cannot take credit for the improvement, but rather Republican governors and state legislatures, their policies, our policies of cutting taxes and reducing the size of government, has led to job growth in spite of the policies of President Obama. To touch lastly on the DC insider, yeah, certainly I think that experience is a good thing. I actually value governmental experience because I think governing is a skill, and not everyone has that skill. Right. But you look at what Hillary Clinton's record is, and besides CHIP, I don't know of any achievements. Now, some will argue that the Iran deal was an achievement. We will argue that it was a bad deal. But I think that regardless of my personal views, the voters are frustrated with people who have been in D.C. for too long. That's why I think you saw governors like Scott Walker and John Kasich and Bobby Jindal get in the race, for president, and Martin O'Malley. So I think that the voters, whether or not there's value to having a D.C. insider, I don't think the voters really want that at the moment.
Okay, Mark, I'm sure you've got something to say about
sure.
that.
When we talk about the recovery and where does it happen, actually it's happened across the country, and in fact, places like Ohio, it's been slower to come back than in other places. Places like California, Colorado, where there are Democratic governors, has some of the highest and quickest recovery. New York, all have had quicker recoveries than what it is Ohio, and better job growth. So it has been the policies of President Obama that have improved job growth in this country, and again, we want to make sure that it happens and it's spread around equally, that wages are increased. That's why Hillary Clinton wants to see the minimum wage raised to $15. That's why we want to have a tax code that is more equal, and that the people in the top 1% pay a fair share of it. Just like we shouldn't have billionaires that go 22 years or 20 years without having to pay taxes. It's just not right.
Or lose $1 billion in a year.
Well, who knows what went on there? But that's not how an equitable economy should be, and that's what Hillary Clinton will strive to make sure there's an equitable recovery. But again, we talked about whether it was good or bad to have a surplus in 2000 and whether Newt Gingrich forced that. Well, I think both of them went to the table and came up with that. But when we had a Republican president in 2000 for 8 years, and for 6 of those years we had a Republican Speaker of the House, we did not get balanced budgets. They didn't force each other's hands, and that's when we had the deficit rise to a record rate. So, that's why I think that we need someone with experience and a proven ability to reach across the aisle to make the compromises and to make things happen. And that's why I think Hillary Clinton's going to be the best choice.
Okay, thank you. We have a caller, and welcome to You and the Law. What is your question for our panel?
Hi. I know that this year has been a really interesting year for a number of reasons, but part of it is with candidates like Bernie Sanders getting into the race, you have sort of an influx of new participants in the democratic process. And I think, you see this year there's a lot of heartburn, a lot of lessons, especially about how a primary system works. But not only that, I think with social media, people tend to get an insular view of what's happening and influencing an election. So when a candidate perhaps loses, when a person's Facebook friends or group thinks that, they're a lock to win, there's a lot of confusion there. And I think with an insular environment, and then also people new to the process, there's maybe a disconnect about how campaigns are actually won. And I'm curious from both your perspectives as a Democrat and Republican, what makes for a successful campaign?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Raj, you want to take that?
Sure.
Start?
Well, I think the caller was right in that, Bernie Sanders for the Democrats and Donald Trump for the Republicans are game changers. That these two candidates certainly presented new sort of views and new voters into each party and their primaries. I think that the primary process is very, very different than the general election, and I also think that presidential politics is a lot different than a statewide election or a local election. In the primary process, you're looking at the delegate count and where you put resources. You're also looking at the horse race, right? So you want to do well in the early states in Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, Michigan, and Nevada, and Florida to build that momentum, because the majority of candidates are going to drop out or the money will dry up for them after those primaries. And then you look at dedicating resources where you can win. John Kasich, for example, played in Michigan instead of South Carolina, where he knew he was going to lose. So the primary process. The other thing that, at least on the Republican side, was interesting is you saw 17 candidates, and that sort of prevented anyone from mounting a serious challenge against Donald Trump. Donald Trump sort of started the primaries with a base of 23 to 27% support, and really only got to 33, 34%. But by the time there was one or two other candidates left to sort of get coalesce the anti-Trump vote, Donald Trump was too far ahead in the delegate count. In the general election, I think it comes down to who has the money to campaign, who has the grassroots infrastructure to go door to door and talk to neighbors. I think that this election is a little different because I think it's just sort of entered the social conscious through the 24/7 news cycle. That's all everyone wants to talk about is the presidential election, and people debate every single thing Donald Trump said or Hillary Clinton said, and that is different.
Or
even
tweeted.
Than or tweeted. That's different than even what happened in 2012 with Governor Romney and President Obama. So I really think that the presidential election has become one of the national media, and the national media, therefore, I think has a certain responsibility to be fair. But as far as statewide elections, look at Senator Portman and his opponent, Governor Strickland, that is still a very grassroots focus. Senator Portman team has knocked on over 4 million voter contacts, doors, and phone calls, and he's everywhere speaking at events, speaking to groups. So I think the national election is very, very different than how you win sort of a statewide or more local election.
Mark, thoughts?
For the Democratic side, obviously, we had fewer candidates here, and we actually had fewer candidates in 2008. And I think it's one of the things that I think the question was, how do you mount campaigns, and particularly in a primary type area, and you basically have to have a broad base in our party coalition, if you will. You have to have the white working class. You have to have students. You have to have young people. You have to have minorities. You have to have women. So the candidate that can most bring those together is going to be the one that's most successful. And a lot of it also has to do with organization too, and how well you do that. One of the things that Senator Sanders had most success in was in caucuses rather than primaries in our this year. He did very well in caucuses where you have fewer people, but it took more organization to bring them together. And he tended to win those. When you actually had primaries where more of a broader people came to vote, and it wasn't just a limited time, you had all day or early voting, et cetera. Hillary Clinton had much more success at those type of voting. So it's in leading up to nominations, you have to be able to be ideally successful in running a mini general election campaign, which is like a primary, and also be able to the skills to get people for when you have the caucuses.
All right. Are you still there, caller?
Yes.
Do you have any follow-up? Does that answer your question?
I did. Well, yes, it does. And I did have just one short follow-up. As I said in the original question, there's a lot of people that are new to the process, and people are saying, well, I want to be involved with a third party, but certainly a lot of the organization and strength exists in the Democratic and Republican parties right now. But that being said, with the people getting involved, I think there's confusion about what they can do or how to get involved. And I'm just wondering what your advice would be to somebody who says, I want to become part of that process.
Well, in our party, it's fairly easy to. I mean, you come down. I think it's probably. I would think the Republican Party as well. You come down and you make yourself known.
When you say come down,
to our local, wherever our party headquarters are.
Okay.
You make yourself known. You either, I want to go out and knock door to door and talk to my neighbors. I want to make phone calls. I want to make, it's basically groundwork on a local level. That's where these decisions are made. I know a lot of, we don't make decisions on what the TV ads are going to be or the radio ads or printed stuff, but you can make real solid difference by knocking on doors and making their phone calls. And early on you can do that. I mean, if you have a candidate, say in 2020 that you are interested in, you get involved early on in 2019 or whatever, 2018 probably, late 2018, and you become involved. But the other thing I would like to say is become involved locally. Niraij here, I mean, he's, I was, when I became elected, I was 35, which makes me look like an old man compared to Niraij here when he was elected. And because he showed up, he volunteered, he showed his skills, he had and that people say, hey, here's a young man that we have confidence in from the Republican Party. And I think I had the same thing when I was first started out. I showed up, I had some skills. I wasn't born into politics. My parents were, retired Air Force and worked as a janitor. I don't know, Niraij, I'm sure you weren't born into politics either. I hear people say, well, it's insular, that you have to, that special people. That's just not true in our party. I'm sure it's not true in the Republican Party. If you want to make a difference, you can make a difference. You start locally and you build.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Same with us. Is you just need to show up to our office or give me a call. You can actually contact me through my website, niraijantani.com, and I'd be happy to help anyone get involved with anyone from the Donald Trump campaign to a local judge's campaign. Happy to connect people. But yeah, it's about knocking doors. It's about outreaching to friends and neighbors and making calls. And no, it's not fun work, but it's very, very important work. And that's how elections are won. But if you show up, if you give us a call, I think we'd be happy to connect anyone. It's very easy. People will accept. Senator Portman has an office in Washington Township. The Trump campaign is opening an office in Oakwood, and down on the line. But we obviously need volunteers, we need supporters, and so any candidate would be happy to get people involved.
Great. Are you still there?
Yes.
Any follow-up from that?
No, that's great. Thank you.
We appreciate your call. Thanks for watching and tuning in.
All right, thanks.
All right, we're going to take a very short break. We're a little bit more than halfway through the program to let you know that you are watching You and the Law. We're talking about election 2016 with the Democratic Chair of Montgomery County, Mr. Mark Owens, and Representative Niraij Antani, 42nd District. Okay. 42nd. And our telephone number is 223-5311. We are sponsored by the Dayton Bar Association, which has been in effect for since 1883. Who was the president then? Do you know? Grover Cleveland?
I think so.
Yes. Well, we wouldn't have had a show then, but Dayton Bar Association is the director's Bill Wheeler is doing a terrific job, always has. And the Bar Association provides a variety of community services for the benefit of the Miami Valley citizens, including lawyer referral service. If you don't have a lawyer, you need a lawyer, you can call 222-6102 or 222-7902. I think that's right. I'm reading it here, so it must be. They have a notary public service if you want to become a notary, and not just on a lark, but you may work for some company that needs a notary, or there's a need for it in your community. There's applications and testing. Take a test, do some studying, pass that, and you'll be a notary. We have an important program called Wills for Heroes, which is volunteer members of our association creating wills for emergency first responders, firefighters, police, and EMTs. It's a great program. If you fall into that category, call the Bar Association. They usually have one of those every month. Our website is www.daybar.org. For more information about the Bar Association, the members will appreciate it. So let's get back to our discussion, which is election 2016. One of the topics which is not in play much, but will be tomorrow, and if you're watching right now, it's October the 3rd, is what will the vice presidential candidates be doing? And we have two. Michael Pence, I think he goes by Mike Pence, who is the governor of Indiana, is Donald Trump's vice presidential candidate. And Mr. Kaine, what's Kaine's first name? Tim Kaine. And I was watching a program today that says, we don't know who these guys are. And Tim Kaine, of course, is Hillary Clinton's vice presidential candidate and speaks fluent Spanish. So what effect will the debate have on them and Hillary and Donald Trump, do you think, if any?
Well, in most cases, vice presidential candidates don't have much an effect other than unless it's controversial. But I think these two are pretty much down the line Democrat, down the line Republican. I think in both instances it was they picked people that would assure their bases and ensure that the general public that they are competent.
Well, they used to say the vice president is a heartbeat away from being president, and of course that may come into play this year because the candidates are more, well, they're a little older than the usual. I think
yeah. I mean,
Trump's going to be 70 and
he'd be
Hillary
the
Clinton's like 69.
He would be the oldest president elected, and she would be
And they
the
both have great
second
stamina,
oldest,
yeah.
at least.
Yeah.
She'd be the second oldest.
Right.
Only Ronald Reagan would have been older than
But I
her.
haven't
She-
heard much about that, so
Well,
what do you
again, it's part of what I started to say is that these guys were trying to, give assurances to people that they're competent. I mean, look, I think Mike Pence is a competent person. I think Tim Kaine is. Now, I disagree with Mike Pence on a lot of his issues. He's a core, to the bone conservative, a social conservative that was passed the legislation in Indiana that was anti-LGBT, so I totally disagree with him. But I think he is a competent person. Tim Kaine has said he was a mayor, he was a governor, he's a senator. He's very competent. He's in line with the Democratic Party on most issues, and so I think that if something were to happen to Hillary Clinton, he has had a proven ability to run the country.
Kaine's also an example of somebody who, what you were saying before, what you were both saying about starting at the grassroots
Right.
level. He started, I believe it's mayor of Richmond. Or,
He was actually on city council. And then
city
he came out.
mayor, mayor, something
Lieutenant
in Virginia.
governor,
Right.
and then senator.
United States senator. So
I think that typically, yes, the Chairman Owens is right that the vice presidential candidates have, little impact on the final outcome of the race. People vote top of the ticket. I think the biggest thing is making sure they don't detract from votes, and if they can then help with a certain segment of voters. For example, 2008, you saw John McCain pick Sarah Palin because she was a woman. You saw President Obama choose Joe Biden for the foreign policy experience, et cetera, et cetera. I will tell you that at least in the Republican Party, I can't speak for what Tim Kaine did for the Democratic Party, but in the Republican Party, Mike Pence, the choice of Mike Pence, comforted a lot of Republicans who weren't necessarily supportive of Donald Trump from the beginning, myself included. There are a lot of us who are very, very pro-life. I am extremely pro-life. My voting record in the legislature indicates that. And Donald Trump says now he is pro-life, but before 10 years ago was not. And so with the addition of Mike Pence to the ticket, someone with a solid conservative pro-life record in Congress and as governor, that was a message, I think, to the pro-life community and to the conservative community that, look who I chose as vice president, my biggest first governing decision, I'm with you. And that really did help comfort a lot of Republicans who weren't on board with Trump to begin with.
do we really want to overturn Roe versus Wade? I mean, it's been the law for 43 years, and it seems like everybody's sort of comfortable with it, and I understand what your position is, choice and pro-life and things like that, and certainly valid positions, but aren't we kind of returning to the horse and buggy days if we have somebody who is actually against that concept and has an agenda on the court, and they're not supposed to be an agenda on the court. It's supposed to be a fair approach to every question that comes before you. So, what do you? I don't know.
I mean, I absolutely think we should overturn Roe v. Wade. I'm very, very pro-life. I think that what we in the Republican Party have to be careful of, if we send up a test case to the court, what we don't want to happen is to give Ruth Bader Ginsburg the opportunity to redefine it on the Equal Protection Clause instead of it as a right to privacy like she said she's want to do. So if we're going to do this, we need to ensure that we have the votes on the court. But at the end of the day, I think that there is a large segment of people who are not comfortable with Roe v. Wade at all and want to see it overturned and want to see the right to life protected, myself included. And I think, 50% of America who are Republicans want to see that as well. So I know at least in, perhaps among independent voters, I don't know, how important of an issue it is. But in the Republican Party, being pro-life and nominating pro-life justices, it is a do or die issue. You will lose support of the majority of the Republican Party if you are not pro-life, and if you will not commit to nominating justices who will overturn Roe v. Wade.
I can see that, Mark.
Well, it's been 43 years of settled law now, and I understand Niraij where his feelings are, and I'm sure feels very strongly about it. But let's look at 43 years, and we've had how many Republican presidents during that period of time? We've had about half that time that they've run Congress, and they've never done anything to change it. They've not brought forward an amendment to overturn it. They keep promising it. There's certain people in the movement, Republican Party, that maybe it's not that important, and if they lost it, they would lose whether it be a fundraising tool or a way to whip up their constituents to do it. So I question whether everybody in there is totally committed as what Steve Niraij would be.
Well, I agree that a lot of Republicans give lip service to the pro-life community. I am not one of them, and in fact, I've sort of, in the pro-life community, started saying to make pro-life a priority. You have a lot of Republican elected officials who go to D.C. or go to Columbus who say they are pro-life, but then they say, oh, well, there's this education bill, there's this criminal justice bill, they are more of a priority. In my opinion, we need folks who will go to Columbus and go to D.C. that make pro-life a priority, and I think there's a large segment of Republican voters who want that. But I think that you are correct that, yes, unfortunately, a lot of Republican members of Congress just pay lip service to the pro-life community and then go on with their day.
Is this a good issue for women of the millennial era, which is now, with the advancements in medicine and things like that? I mean, it doesn't seem like this issue has much to do with running the government, to me, and that's what we're looking for, somebody competent to run. But what do you think? I mean,
well, I think from a pro-choice standpoint, I think so many people have worked hard to be able to give women the right to choose what goes on with their own bodies, make birth control, birth available on a wide basis, and and to have, if they need to, as a resort, to have an abortion if they need to, if that's what they choose to do for their own bodies. And I think the one fear that in the pro-choice community is that some people are lackadaisical or that don't understand the struggle it was to get to that point, and it may not be a priority when they're thinking about it. But probably if they lost that choice, well, then it would have an effect on them So that's one of the things that people within the pro-choice community have to continue to do, is to remind them that this is a choice that you have. Your mothers and your grandmothers have fought for this, and that you can't let it go by the wayside, because you'd have to fight forever to get it back.
You know, I certainly think, yes, it is a wedge issue for you know, young female voters. You know, and as the youngest elected official in Ohio, and one of the only minority Republicans in Ohio, you know, I've been one of the foremost critics of the Republican Party on how we engage in outreach, or lack thereof, to young voters and minority voters. But on this particular issue, some say, okay, let's not talk about it. Okay, and that is a strategy for sure. The other strategy is, let's talk about it more, because the more you educate someone on a particular view, the more they are likely perhaps to switch to your side. And I think this is one of those issues. Look, you know, how many years ago was it that the thought or concept of banning partial birth abortion was seen as ludicrous, that it was going to be inhibiting on women's rights or what have you, and yet now, in 2016, the concept of anyone having a partial birth abortion is vile, and so times change, and I think that, you know, public opinion will change, but it's our job as Republicans to make that argument, and to make that argument in a way that doesn't minimalize or exclude people from the conversation. But certainly, I think that it's a conversation worth having.
Okay, well, as they say on TV, I want to pivot away from that just for a second. I want to talk about two things. We got about a little less than 10 minutes left. Voter demographics and endorsements, and what effect do you think overall they have on this election and any election?
There's a couple different kinds of endorsements.
Right.
Let's say a newspaper endorsement. Generally, I think it's been shown that maybe it might affect 1 to 2%. A lot of times it's more important in judicial races than other places, because people don't know much about judges, and sometimes they tend to follow those better. But this year it's a little bit different, because we've had so many papers that have never endorsed a Democrat have now endorsed Hillary Clinton. Cincinnati Enquirer, it's been, you know, 80 years, I think it's been like that. The Dallas Star, Arizona has never endorsed a Democrat until now. So I do think that it will have an effect. I think it's not going to, if it's a close race in those states, I'm not sure what will in Texas. It will probably move some people and make it a closer race. But in Ohio, it could make a difference where you place places like Hamilton County. It could make a difference, particularly with people, and I believe it's going to have more effect on people in the suburbs that maybe are not satisfied with either candidate, but that might push them to Hillary Clinton more than because they're so used to having that paper endorse a Republican. So that could be. Then there's personal endorsements. I think some of those have an effect, some don't. You know, I mean, today I think LeBron James came out and endorsed.
That one has an effect.
I think that has an effect.
Yeah.
Oh, I think so. In places it does. I think it does. It, you know, particularly with younger minorities, perhaps that aren't as engaged as they were with President Obama. When he says something like that, I think it does have an effect.
Yeah, I would mostly agree with the chairman that newspaper endorsements affect the leaners. It's gonna, you know, someone who perhaps hasn't made up their mind in the suburbs of Cincinnati or Columbus, that it will help them, you know, be one factor in helping them make up their mind. I don't think it will be, you know, oh my gosh, the Enquirer endorsed, you know, this candidate, I have to vote for them. But certainly a factor. I think it probably impacts more in local races where, you know, perhaps someone is more unknown. I will say, and I agree that the LeBron James endorsement does matter, especially in Cleveland.
That's a interesting fact to come out of this show.
But the other thing I would say is that certain organizational endorsements matter, especially when you have 4 unions who supported Governor Strickland when he was governor, who now have switched and said, we're not going to support Strickland, we're going to support Senator Portman for re-election, all of whom are traditionally Democratic unions in the FOP,
It's all the NAFTA
the operating
stuff, isn't it?
engineers. Well, I think it's a variety of things. The fact that Governor Strickland was a failed governor and his plans for the future aren't what Ohio needs, and it's a testament to Senator Portman's leadership. But when you have unions like this that have tens of thousands of members who are now being told by their union to vote for Senator Portman, I think that has an impact.
A failed governor?
Well,
What do you think?
That's a long way from being a failed governor. Obviously, he was governor during the worst economic times since the 30s, and his last years began the recovery in Ohio. And his last year in office, we started adding jobs again. So to say I think it's an unfair attack then, it's an unfair attack now to say he's a failed governor. I think what he did as the governor of Ohio helped begin the recovery in Ohio. And I think that unions, we obviously have many more than just 4 unions that are supporting Governor Strickland. I think that in the end, he's still going to have most of the votes of the union members that are in the state of Ohio.
Let me just ask you, and today you're the Republican spokesman. I'm not asking if you're a big Trump supporter or anything like that. But given the fact that 17 people bit the dust in these primaries, and there were some good candidates there. We're not, maybe it's just Trump was popular for the day, but does it bother you that the candidate for your party has received no newspaper endorsements, whatever, around the country?
The funny part is, I think that there is some value in our newspaper endorsements in swing states. So the Cincinnati Enquirer, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, et cetera, and the Dispatch. But in our party, some of these national paper endorsements hurt the candidates, especially in the primaries. If you're a Republican running for president, you don't want the New York Times endorsement, okay?
I don't know about that.
Trust
Really?
me. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Right.
When Governor Kasich got the New York Times endorsement, there were a lot of Republicans who said, well, that sort of seals the deal for me. And I'm a Kasich supporter saying that. And so, but there are more Republican-leaning papers like the Columbus Dispatch, who, yes, it will be a surprise if Donald Trump, doesn't get that endorsement. But again, I think that at the presidential level, it has, a minimal impact. But if you're running for state rep or county prosecutor, what have you, those endorsements make more of a difference.
Is there a down ballot effect, do you think, then?
I think there was a lot of questions of what a Trump candidacy would do to down ballot Republicans, and some people were concerned, some people were excited. I think it will actually probably level out. If you look at what has happened in the Republican Party, 86% of Republicans now are saying they will support Donald Trump. He's up by 5 points in the polls in Ohio, the most recent Quinnipiac poll that came out this morning. And even if he doesn't end up winning by 5 points, and even if he ends up losing, Hillary Clinton's not gonna blow him out of the water, right? I think there's a chance he could win.
Just have to win by 1, right?
That's right. But as far as the down ballot effect, some people were afraid of him losing by double digits. That's not going to happen. If he loses, it will be by a marginal amount.
Okay.
And the biggest thing with those down ballot stuff is turnout, and who can excite the turnout. And if there's an excited turnout on the Democratic side, it helps our down ballot folks. Certainly it does with theirs. And I think it's ultimately that's what decides it.
Okay, we have about 2 minutes left. We're not going to get into half the stuff that we talked about getting into, but it's important, and you just brought the subject up, people getting onto the polls if you're interested in what's going to happen in the election. So let's talk very briefly about voter registration. Either one of you can tell us about it and what you need to do. It's got to be 30 days before, and then...
Yeah, voter registration ends on next Tuesday, the 11th. If you have changed your address since your last election, you need to go in and make
your current permanent address.
Current permanent address. If you have any questions at all about whether you've been you're a registered voter, you should go down. You can get it right off of the website, and you can fill out the papers and get it in there. Call. You can call Democratic headquarters at 222-4007, or they can call
whatever number you're at.
have.
What is your number?
I don't have ours memorized.
And we'll get you a voter registration card and get you registered before then. And then the other important thing is that starting the next day, October 12th, you can start to vote early. And you can do that.
And it's on the Board of Elections website.
That's right. And if you're a voter and you can now vote by home, because Secretary of State John Husted has mailed every valid voter an absentee ballot request form.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a production of You and the Law. We've run out of show, that's why I'm saying that. And we've been talking about election 2016, and it's been my honor to have Mr. Mark Owens, chair of the Democratic Party, and Representative Niraij Antani, a millennial and the youngest representative in the legislature, as our guest, and talking about their candidates and their positions. I also want to thank all the volunteers behind the scenes who have made this program possible. I've been your producer and host. I'm Mike Monta. Get out and vote. Vote for your favorite candidates, your favorite issue. Go to the Board of Elections website, and they will tell you what all of the personnel and issues are. Good night. We'll see you next time.